Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Param Ishvaro Guratmeti Murtiveda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Tava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanandam Satguru Pranatosh Maham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste. Welcome to our Tripura class, beginning chapter 8, page 83. So this chapter is a short one. It's going to elucidate the parable when she explains about her friend, her mother, and everything. We are trying to figure it out. And I forgot at the time, a few weeks back, that we had a chapter clarifying all of that. But it was good because we are exercising our intellect out, trying to interpret the parable without looking into the answers. So now the answers come, and they are more or less on those lines that we were engaging, considering. Having learned from the mouths of his wife, Hemachuda, the true significance of Tripura, who is pure intelligence and God in truth, and also the technique of Tripura's worship from competent teachers as prompted by divine grace, Hemachuda gained peace of mind and took to the worship with intense devotion. So now we have moved. The book has anticipated that at the end, everybody was emancipated in that kingdom. And it was a shed of light, that was illumining those days and spreading to other kingdoms and so on. But now it steps back to explain the parable, and then it's going to explain better the dialogues that took place within during that process. The process of what? Of contemplation, manana and nididhyasana. So he was going back and forth, and it's very beautiful. It's pure self-inquiry, and it's something that it's so how you say, it's presented in a way that one can do a lot of work based on these words. Okay, you just read them and internalize them and make those words yours, and then you are there doing that kind of inquiry, doing that kind of investigation, in the lights in the light of the teachings. It's incredibly beautiful, this book. So now we step back to see what was that parable, in which way she explained it to him. So a few months passed in this manner. God's grace is the sine qua non of any kind of knowledge of God. So here in the previous paragraph, he learned from the wife, and then he was, like this is Dattatreya telling Parashurama, he learned from his wife, and his wife presented the self as Tripura, Tripura, the three states of consciousness pervaded by Turiya, the fourth factor. So the three states, we have Tripura, and Turiya, the self, is the pervading principle, Satchitananda, maintaining, sustaining everything, and this is pure intelligence. It's in truth, it is God himself, God herself, howsoever, and Tripura is God present in a female manner. And worship is the technique. The technique means the sadhana, and also through the sadhana of worship, presented by competent teachers as prompt by divine grace. So as we see here, again, worship, devotion, the relationship with God, okay, as presented by competent teachers, is the best way to achieve this self-knowledge, okay? So it is the grace of Ishwara, revealed knowledge by Ishwara, presented by some teachers, okay, without which it's almost impossible. I have been talking about that a little bit in my Portuguese group here, because people, actually it was in some side conversations with people who contact me, they want to grow spiritually, but they are so far from even conceiving the idea that there is such a thing as Ishwara, as the creator, as God. Oh, I have been doing this and this and this and this. But I mean, the idea of devotion, of understanding God and having appreciation and reverence to the creator, okay, is something that most people in the New Advaita ignores completely. It's not really addressed. Karma, Dharma, as a means to prepare the mind. And here in Vedanta, it's clear. I have been talking to someone who is it's a friend, it's almost like a relative, and it's so far from understanding and conceiving the idea of God and the reason for this devotion, and at the same time, people believe that they are highly spiritual, So you cannot be spiritual unless you are a religious person. When we come to Vedanta, we become a religious person. What is a religious person? Is a person who understood that there is such a thing as the creator, there is such a thing as God. You are going to say something, Lynn?
I was thinking about last class's chapter, and it occurred to me, and I don't know if I'm thinking correctly, so please advise, that when you have devotion, it sets up a resonance with Ishwara. It's like you're on the same wavelength, although I don't want to get into that woo-woo stuff, but it's like, how can Ishwara not respond to you if you are in the resonance with it? It's like love is the glue for everything. So that it was a beautiful chapter. I really appreciate what you brought to it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, this is very, very nicely said. Great contribution. So you are bringing another element. So we can call it harmonizing with the laws and principles of the creator. So it's a way to be harmonized with the Lord. And you are talking in terms of resonance or synchronicity, which is a different language, but explain the same thing. You need to be in harmony with the Lord. And then how can you not be benefit by that? Your mind is going to be clear, because unless we are in resonance, in harmony with the Lord, you're going to be conflicting with the Lord. And the Lord is the manifestation, its laws, its principles. If you go against it, your mind is going to be disturbed, and you are not going to have the mental health or qualification to understand. And we do that by harmonizing with the creator and appreciating the opportunity, being a devotee and having an attitude of reverence and love and compassion for everything that's created by God. All of that is the process by which we prepare our mind, our body-mind complex, with intense devotion. But as we know, in the spiritual world, especially in the West, people are so far from understanding the role of devotion. I mean, it's unbelievable. And you can't talk about that without making them feel that you are somehow backward and you're still believing in God. And it's something very, very curious to see. People, they want to grow spiritual, but they reject God, and they are on those lines, with Buddhism, like, okay, now we are spiritual people, but we reject God. How can you be spiritual really without being a religious person, meaning to say, understand Nietzsche, which is, oh no, we do meditations, we do this, we do that, we go to the void, and we remain the void. It's just philosophy and meditation to calm down the mind, but it's totally into the darkness of things, because how can you understand Ishvara one or Brahman or the absolute as fullness, completion that is going to resolve the human mind? How can you understand that without understanding Brahma or Ishvara two, the creator? You understand? So it's important. You cannot bypass this relationship between Jiva-Atma and Ishvara, the creator, so that you can develop the qualifications to understand that the reality is not the void, empty, and incomplete, but it is Purna, and it's the nature of conscious existence. And consciousness we experience more clearly, and the Buddhism understands a little bit more about consciousness, human consciousness, they call consciousness, and then behind consciousness there is the void, and so on. So, and how about existence? Existence is a little bit more philosophical, but we are the very source of consciousness and existence, the only source of consciousness and existence. And this does not need to be deprived of duality or experience subject-object. It's in spite of the duality superimposed by Maya Ishvara. So we are, the fullness of conscious existence. Existence is a little bit more philosophical, because everything that exists because I am, and I am consciousness, and we are conscious beings, as we have determined many times, and we exist, and so on. So now, very nicely put, devotion is something that people throw away devotion because they reject God. If there is no God, there is no question of devotion. Devotion is duality. Is you, the apparent jiva, devote to the apparent creator. And if you throw away God, you throw away devotion. And devotion is the very process of purification of the body-mind. It's a very sublime feeling, emotion. You understand? The conversion of emotional desires, but devotion to the creator, is the surest and the most natural process of preparedness or preparation, qualification, development of qualification. So a few months have passed in this manner. And here again, God's grace, the presence of God, devotion to God, and God's grace. Out of this relationship with God, Jiva-Atma benefits, and this benefit is a mind that is in total harmony with the Creator. And then we say it's a grace of the Lord. Okay, so it is a grace of the Lord, but it happens not by itself. It happens because I, the Jiva-Atma, have harmonized myself. Brought myself to that kind of vibration or frequency, by which I harmonize with the entire Dharma field, okay? And I develop very nice qualifications such as empathy, love, compassion, patience, and many other positive aspects. The Supreme Mother's grace descended on him. He heard the story and the Supreme Mother's grace. He immediately, he had gone already through the process of devotion. In the beginning, he was doing lots of rituals in the chapter 1, 2, as we remember, 3. And then now he is fully graced by the Lord. It descended on him, and he became totally indifferent to pleasure and pains, because his mind was entirely absorbed in this practical investigation of the truth. Okay, so he went from devotion, and then passing devotion, he understood, but with the help of his guru, which happened to be his wife, Hemachuda, he understood that the devotion was going to prepare him for this self-inquiry, for this investigation. And then after having become dispassionate, indifferent, positively indifferent, he was totally absorbed with self-inquiry, a practical investigation of the nature of the truth, the nature of reality, the nature of the self. Such a state is impossible for anyone without grace of God. Again, this word state, it is a state. Your mind has to be in a certain state in order to do this work. This state, a contemplative mind, okay, a clear, focus, and contemplate mind, this mental state, which is sine qua non for successful self-inquiry, this state is impossible without devotion and the grace of God that is always the byproduct of that relationship between Jivatma and Ishvara. And that was because the mind was engaged in the practical search for truth. And this is the surest means of emancipation. So for emancipation, we need to engage in self-investigation. Investigation in respect to the real, the true nature of the I, the Atman, the self. And here it's interesting, engage in the practical search, not intellectual, not merely academic studies of the scripture, practical, engaged. What is this consciousness? I'm doing my self-investigation based on the teachings presented by my wife, Hemachuda. And I have the faith that now that my mind is qualified, I'm following the surest means, pramana means of self-knowledge and emancipation. So we have no doubt about that. In fact, only through self-inquiry, self-knowledge takes place. But as Rama, Dattatreya speaks, countless aids will not give emancipation if an earnest search for truth is not made. You can get any kind of aids or help here and there, do things and so on. But if you are not really clear that by inquiry and knowledge alone, emancipation is possible, truth can be gained, can be understood, So you have to be very clear. Earnest search for the truth means to say, now I'm an earnest seeker of knowledge, not I'm an earnest seeker of a certain states or certain experience, okay? So the search for the truth is not a search for a divine experience. It's different, totally different, two different realms. Once more, Hemachuda sought his wife's alone, his mind absorbed in the quest for truth. So the Dattatreya remind him and introduce him, and he's remembering his wife. And his mind absorbed in the truth. She saw her husband coming to her apartment, and so she went to meet him. She welcomed him and offered him her seat. She washed his feet and prostrated before him, as was due to one of his rank, and spoke melting words of sweet love to her husband. Dears, I see you again after such a long time. Are you in good health? Of course, the body is sometimes liable to illness. Do tell me why you have been neglecting me all these days. Not a day passed before without you seeing me and conversing with me. How have you been passing your time, my lord? I could never have dreamed that you would be so indifferent to me. Why so? What makes you so indifferent? How do you spend your nights? You used to say that a moment without me was like an eternity to you, and that you could not bear it. So she's present to him where he was, and she wants to know where you are at right now. In the past, you were so attached to me. I was the love of your life. I was an object, not only of pleasure, but celestial pleasures, because your mind used to be so happy before embracing me and so on, the experience of love, etc. So she's trying to find out what's going on now. Saying this, she embraced him fondly and appeared distressed. Though embraced lovingly by his dear wife, Guru, Hemachuda, he was not moved in the least and said to her, just picture the situation, So the Guru comes and then say, let me play the wife and let me see if I can shake his dispassion, I'm going to tell him, so, why have you neglected me? You couldn't live without me. And then she embraced him fondly. And she's testing him, of course. And then his response is very beautiful. He says, my dear, I can no longer be deceived by you. I'm convinced of your strength, of your knowledge, of your wisdom. I'm convinced that nothing can affect your inherent happiness. Even if I never see you again, your happiness is unaffected by that, because it's your inner happiness. So therefore, don't play with me. You are sage, unperturbed sage. You know this world and beyond this world. How could anything affect you? Forget about this small talk. I'm here to ask questions to my guru, in other words. And then he talks with certain sharpness. He says, please listen. Explain to me that tale you once relate to me as the story of your life. Who is your mother? Who is your friend? Who is her husband? Who are her sons? Tell me, what relationship have all these people to me? He says, so if you have a family, I don't know your family, so they are my related, my parents, now how you say? My relatives. They are my relatives. So what relationship I have to these people? I did not clearly understand it. I no longer think it is a lie, because in the beginning he would say, oh, you are a fool, you're telling stories, how can I trust you? Now he say, I know that you are not lying. I know that there is a deep meaning in that story. You are not misleading me. I have full, absolutely shredded trust in you and in your teachings. I'm sure you told me that parable, which is full of significance. I just need to understand it clearly. Tell me everything in full, so that my understanding is clearly, so that I may understand it clearly. I bow to you reverently, kindly. Clear these doubts of mine. So Hemachuda, with a smiling and with a delighted face, hear her husband, and though within herself, and sought within herself, he is now pure in mind and blessed by by God, by the devotion he had to God. So he is now pure and blessed by God. He is reaping the fruits of his devotion. So it's the blessing. God blesses, not blessings. So he's pure. He is evidently indifferent to the pleasures of life. And he's also strong in mind. So he's prepared. This must be due to God's grace and God's grace alone. Again, the emphasis on God's grace, the relationship between Jiva and Ishvara. creature and creator. It's going to prepare the mind. It's going to purify the heart, and so on. This must be due to God's grace alone, and his former virtues are now bearing fruit. The time is now ripe for him to be enlightened. So I will enlighten him, she said. And she further says, my Lord, God's grace is definitely upon you. You are a blessed being. So the individual, the student, the disciple is ready, is ripe. The fruit drops when a fruit is ripe. He is ready for to be enlightened. And she says, I will enlighten him. So it's important to understand, to make a note here, that she cannot really enlighten him, but she's going to further unfold the teachings because the fruit is very close to drop. She feels that he's so ready that in any moment that final understanding may occur. So he's ripe. He's ready to be enlightened. So I will further unfold the teachings and he's going to understand finally enough. He's highly qualified. So when she says, I will enlighten him, I say, I will teach more to him. I will teach more. But it's his intellect, it's his mind, it's his level of development that is going to assimilate the knowledge. Nobody can assimilate this Aparoksha to anybody else. But one has the possibility to facilitate it by unfolding the teachings. This passion cannot arise otherwise, unless you are really blessed by God. It is the criterion of God's grace that the mind should be wrapped in the quest for truth. After becoming detached from sensual pleasures, I shall now solve the puzzle of my love story and explain it to you. You see, this passion, which is like the two wings of a bird, the two initial Ds, discrimination and dispassion, they go together. More dispassion is going to bring about more and more, better and better discrimination. And the more discrimination you have, farther and farther, or more and more unattached you are to the world. So this passion cannot arise unless you have God's grace. Only by God's grace, the mind should be wrapped in the quest for truth. And then you are now moving from devotion to self-inquiry. After becoming detached from sensual pleasures, I shall now solve the puzzle of my life story. My mother is transcendence. Transcendence means pure consciousness. My best friend in that story is the intellect. It's the discerning faculty within every human being. Every human being has pure, limitless consciousness as one's true nature, all-pervading nature. The best friend, this is interesting because I often say in Portuguese that the subject intellect is our best friend. I often say that in Portuguese language. So the best friend is the intellect, because only on the intellect we can be free from samsara, free from suffering. My best friend is the intellect, the discerning faculty. Ignorance, Madame Ignorance, is Madame Dark, the undesirable friend of the intellect. So knowledge and ignorance. Ignorance So she associates with someone who was so ignorant that is the enemy of the intellect. So her best friend has a friend, and this friend was ignorant, and it was the enemy of her very friend. The friend being the intellect, and then ignorance being the enemy of this intellect. The caprice of ignorance are too well known to need elucidation. She can delude anyone, making a rope seem to be a serpent, and the striking terror in the onlooker. So delusion is a byproduct of ignorance, as we know. And once we are deluded, we definitely believe that the world of duality is the only reality, and the only possibility we have is to consume experience, to try to find happiness and satisfaction. So we see the world as real, the same way we see the rope snake as real, but it's just a rope. Her son is the greatest of all illusions, the mind. His wife is thought or conception or imagination. Her sons of 5 in number, namely hearing, taste, sight, touch, and smell, the 5 senses, whose mentions are the respective senses. What the mind was said to steal from those mentions and taking home for enjoyment of sensual objects are the impressions on the mind to develop later into the productivities of the mind. Sharing stolen objects with his wife is the manifestation of dreams. Dream is the daughter-in-law of delusion. This I found very beautiful. So delusion makes us believe that this world is real. And then we believe that we can find true happiness through the objects of the world. And then we keep developing this desire for objects. And this desire is going to produce some deep impressions in the mind that not only we are deluded here, running, but we create a delusional world built upon our unfulfilled desires. A lot of our dreams are unfulfilled desires or fears, incomplete situations. Sharing stolen objects with his wife is the manifestation of proclivities in dreams. Dream is the daughter-in-law of delusion. There's nothing more delusional than a dream. It may be a pleasant dream or a nightmare, a horrible dream, but it's delusional. Delusional that those projections are real. How so? Because I react as if they are real. As a dreamer, I'm totally deluded. I'm reacting to those projections on the screen through the power of Nidra Shakti, on the stream of my very mind. I react to that as if it is real, total delusion. And in the dream, in the awakened state, we are still deluded. That's why we are producing the delusional dreams. Madame Vorace is desire itself. Her sons are anger and greed. So there was 2 kids of the second marriage. One was Mr. Mean, and the other was something, I forgot the name, but it was greed. Their seat is the body. So it's our very body. Everything is illustration of our human condition. We have all this in his analogy. We have all of these things playing. We see in our body-mind complex. What was said to be most potent talisman is realization of the self. Mind's friend guarding the seat is the vital principle which keeps moving as the life breaths, the pranas. When everybody sleeps, yeah, this guarding friend, friend of the mind is in here, and then here we have the pranas, the 5 pranas, the pranamaya, and the pranamaya is guarding, sustaining. The vital intelligent principle keeps moving, keeping everything alive. The different seats, people by them are hills passed in the eternal passage of the soul. So those are seats, those are experiences. So we go through so many experiences in the journey of the soul. The consumption of the discerning faculty is samadhi. So the consumption of the discerning faculty is samadhi. So this samadhi, one would believe like, okay, so then the only solution is nirvikalpa samadhi. Now we are talking about a byproduct of discrimination, discerning faculty, the consummation, the ultimate end is of this discerning, discriminating faculty is samadhi. So it's a clear indication that this samadhi is not nirvikalpa samadhi. Nirvikalpa samadhi is a byproduct of discipline, of mind control. But here now is discrimination. My admission into my mother's chamber is the final emancipation. Such is in brief, the tale of my life. And then she says, but the same is in your life. Think well and be absolved in this tale. Understand that everyone's life could be seen within this template here. Thus ends the chapter on the course of life in the section of Hemachuda. The course of life represented by this beautiful tale. So you guys have anything to say about this?
This little tale has everything. It's the whole architecture of the jiva, really. Just beautiful. Set out with the motions and the it's just brilliant.
Brilliant, very brilliant, very nice, nicely said. Okay, now we go back to self-inquiry. Chapter 9. How Hemachuda realized the self after analyzing his own mind and plunging within. When Hemachuda understood the significance of his wife's parable, he was agreeably surprised. His voice choked with joy, and he said to her, my dear, you are indeed blessed and very wise too. How shall I describe the profound wisdom of the story of your life, narrated to me in the form of a parable? He had no words to say how profound the teaching was in the form of a parable. Up to now, I did not know how your progress, your stage, how high, how elevated you are. It has all been made as clear to me as a gooseberry resting on the palm of my hand. I now understand that the end of humanity, the goal of humanity, is to realize our wonderful nature. Please now tell me further, who is this mother of yours How is she without beginning? Who are we? What is our true nature? So now he wants details. Okay, I understood it, but I want you to look at it from every angle. And I have many questions. Over the overall, I have understood. But tell me better about your mother, okay? I understood that is pure transcendence, limitless consciousness, yeah, and so on. But tell me more. I want to know it. Yeah? Tell me. And how this can be beyond time, without beginning. And what am I? Who are we? What is our true nature, our real nature? So teach me more. Ask thus Hemachuda told her husband, Lord, listen carefully to what I'm going to tell you, to say, for it is very subtle. It's very simple, but very subtle. Investigate the nature of the self with an intellect made transparently clear. So you need now to do your nididhyasana. Now, since your intellect is pure, it's contemplative, it's sattvic, very clear and focused. So it's subtle, although it's simple. It's not this transcendence, this mother of mind, as I have presented in the tale. It's not an object to be perceived. It's not an object that I can describe. How shall I then explain you of it, tell you of it? Because it does not have any attributes, qualities, or properties. It is the attributeless, and it's not the object of any kind. There is nothing that can describe it, because descriptions are possible only for things that have properties and attributes. But it is nirguna. If even the attribution of the three gunas, the three energy are not there, and then there is no possibility of formation of attributes, characteristics, properties, and so on. Now, how am I going to describe something that is indescribable? But you can know my mother only if you know yourself. You want to know the mother, this transcendental, limitless consciousness, you need to know the self. So as we know, you cannot know that objectively, but you know the self as your very self. The self does not admit any characteristic or specification, and therefore no teacher can teach it. So as we know the self, there are very few things we can say about the self. We can say that it's the very source of existence and consciousness, and it is the only reality. Therefore, it's one without the second. Therefore, it is limitless, because there is nothing more, nothing other than itself. So we can say that, Satchitananda. We cannot say much more. And then we can say many things, like it's not this, it's not that, or it's not part, property, or product of matter and energy, and so on. But we cannot say much of anything, because it's not something like it, this, or that, because it, this, or that are defined by its characteristics, by its properties. So there is no specification for the self. But nobody can teach it. However, realize the self within you. Why? Because it abides in you. It abides in unblemished intellect. So the self abides in the human intellect. How so? I am, and I know that I exist, and I know that I'm conscious that I exist. Every human intellect, as Nisargadatta used to say, is an advertisement of the eternal, advertisement of the Supreme Mother, okay? Consciousness, Brahman. So it's there shining as a conscious principle and existing principle that knows that I am, I exist. Yeah? So you need to go that, trace your mind back, like Papaji used to say, to Turiya, to the self, to Tripura. However, realize the self within you. It abides in your intellect. It pervades everything, beginning from your personal gods that you worshipped, and it pervades even the virus and amoebas and whatsoever, everything. But it's not cognizable by the mind. It cannot be understood by the mind cognitively, and neither by the sense, of course. It's beyond the intellectual understanding, because anything we understand by its characteristics and its specifications and properties and attributes. Being free of attributes and properties, you cannot cognize it, okay? The senses are not going to help, because there is nothing to capture from the self, because the five senses are helpless, and the mind cannot do without having the data coming from the five senses, and then the self cannot be assessed in that way. Being itself unillumined by external agency, and there is no light of any star that's going to also illumine and revert, because every physical light from every star is fed by the light of consciousness, which is the light of the light, the ultimate pramana, the ultimate illuminator. It illuminates all, everywhere, and all, always, beyond all universe and beyond the three times. It surpasses demonstration or discussion. You cannot discuss about that. You cannot demonstrate. Nothing can be used to validate it or to demonstrate it. Why? Why? Because it is so simple. The self is self-luminous, self-revealing, self-demonstrated, self-evident. Everybody is exercised one's conscious existence, and that is the self. But the self, almost invariably, is taken to be the mind, the intellect, the pranas, and the physical body, and so on. So there is this superimposition, but the self is indeed self-evident at all times, self-revealed, hidden in plain sight, all the time, shining as a conscious being. How, where, or when, or by whom has it been specifically described, even if incompletely described? No teacher has ever described the self. What you ask me, my dear, amounts to ask me to show your very eyes to yourself. Just imagine, you say, okay, I heard that I have eyes and I accept this statement. How so? Because I know that I can see. When I close my eyes, I see nothing, and then I see. I know that I have eyes, but I want to see my eyes. And I have never met a mirror, because, I lived 1,500 years ago. There was no mirror at my time. So now show me my eyes. No, I cannot show your eyes, but I can help you to understand that you see the world through the eyes. Therefore, you have your eyes, and it does not require any demonstration. Understand? Just imagine. At least on those days, if people, the indigenous or whatever, did not have a mirror, at least they would say, you have eyes. I can't see my eyes, I see your eyes. That's good enough, because you see, I see, you have an eye, so I have an eye. You see my eyes, you can be a testimony to, I have eyes, I see your eye. It's okay. And the same thing is here. When I see Lynn, I see a conscious being. When she sees me, she sees a conscious being. So we are Vedantins, we know that we are seeing consciousness in its appearance, Namarupas, manifest. So, but where is it? So, no, I can't see the self in myself because, I don't have a mirror in my home. But I see a living creature in Lynn and Mark and Philippe and Sylvia. We don't need any validation, demonstration, or discuss about that. Even the best teachers cannot bring your eyes to your sight unless they pull the eyes and say, here are your eyes, but now you cannot see it anymore. Just as a teacher is of no use in this instance, so the guru has no use to show you, to demonstrate you the self. But she said that she was going to enlighten him. And now she's saying, but I cannot do anything about that. You have to understand that you are the self. Nobody is going to show you the self. You need to understand that you are the self. And now, what kind of help is that? It's the only help the guru can provide the student with. At the most, the guru can guide you towards it, nothing more, using the pramana called the Upanishads. I shall also explain to you the means to realize you are the self. Listen attentively. As long as you are contaminated with the notions of me and mine, my home, my body, my mind, my intellect, the self will not be found, for it lies beyond cognition and cannot be realized as myself. The self cannot be cognitively perceived, apprehended, and much less taken to be myself. So now she's going to attack another base. Which base is that? The base of ignorance. Okay. Which base of that is the notion of the ego, I and mine. So this, you are the self, but this self-knowledge is being obstructed by the ego, who is still attached to the idea of I and mine. My body, my home, my mind, my intellect, my knowledge. That way the self will never be found. And then she says, that's enough for today. You are very ripe, but you need to do some homework. Retire into solitude and do your nididhyasana around this pointer, which is the ego and the sense of I and mine, which is obstructing your self-realization. Analyze and see what those things are which are recognized as mine. My body, the five koshas, go through the teachings and see all my experience I take to be mine. And the instrument of experience in all these levels I take to be my eyes, my ear, my pranas, my everything, my physical body. Make a list of everything that is mine. Everything I have taken to be mine. This is robbery. This is stealing. Furthermore, these things were provided by Ishvara. But ignorance makes one to identify with the ego and possess things that do not really belong to the ego. So make a list of everything that I say mine, 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 mine. analyze them, and then reject them all, discard them all, transcend them all. If you discard everything that you believe that is mine, you're going to have a better look for the real self, that which is beyond I and mine. The I, can the I survive without mind? That's a good inquiry here. Can the I survive without mind? Mind is a byproduct of the I under the spell of ignorance. Oh, excuse me just for a moment. Mind is a byproduct of the I under the spell of ignorance. When I'm totally out self-ignorant, I just say I, and then immediately, yes, my body, I the body, my five senses, I the five senses, those identifications with the body-mind take place right away when the I is under the spell of ignorance. But the same I, the same self, can be trained, can learn to identify itself, not as the body-mind, but the I, okay? And this I, Nisargadatta Maharaj used to call the pure I, the pure consciousness. But it is the pure reflected consciousness in an intellect that was properly resolved by self-inquiry. I educate my mind not to provide me with I, the body, I, this is mine. I educate my mind to see the I and say, this is the self reflecting my intellect. Once my intellect sees the world, from the angle, from the vision of the Upanishads, now I see I am consciousness, and it reflects in this intellect, and I see everything objectively without superimposed value and with no attachments to anything, because I know that this is all a superimposition of names, colors, and forms, and I am the light, I am the only I. Although manifest as the I am the I in a language that some of you, most of you should know, but I am experiencing this beautiful world because my mind has redefined itself, not as I, the body-mind, but I, the original limitless self that we all are. Therefore, retire into solitude and look for everything that you believe to be yours and discard them all, transcend them all. Look for the real self. Beautiful homework, beautiful nididhyasana for someone who is totally obsessed with self-knowledge and emancipation. For instance, you know me as your wife and not as yourself. I'm only relate to you and not part of you. Much less you see me as your very being, as the only being there is. So retrain your mind. Don't see me as an object of yours, your wife. See me as the self. Your very self, the only self, the non-dual self. Analyze everything in this way and reject any sense of mind. What remains over is transcending it all, is beyond conception, appropriation, and relinquishment. Know that to be the true self. That knowledge is the final emancipation. Very inspiring, huh? Very beautiful. Okay, I guess we all can take the role of Hemachuda and we can all do some nididhyasana in the next few days until we meet again this coming Thursday, the day after tomorrow. How about that? Okie doke. Anything from you guys? Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, my friends. Namaste. We meet again next Thursday, same time. Our meetings are Mondays and Thursday. Thank you, Philippe. Much love to you too.
Okay, thanks, Arlinda. Wonderful satsang.
Thank you, my
Bye
friend.
now.
Bye-bye.